the same won't get you where you need. The third reason you've got to change is that there are so many other legitimate demands for government funds that are displacing higher education as a priority. My friend King Alexander gave me a chart earlier today showing me that California's share of the state budget is at its lowest point since 1961. In part, that is because the state of California is doing a lot more things within its budget today than it was doing in 1961. We didn't have Medicare in 1961, or Medicaid. We didn't have a lot of the services that are provided by government. We weren't putting the kinds of money into environmental preservation that we were in 1961. And so today, as you as a state government try to pursue things, it's really much more difficult and much more complex than it was in the past. And we don't have to necessarily like that, but that's the way life is. Plus, one of the dilemmas we have in higher education, or one of the possibilities we have, is in fact we have another revenue source, tuition, which we can rely at least in part on. So one of the problems that higher education always faces when it's looking at, and legislatures face, is that when push comes to shove, one of the areas they can shove is tuition, is higher education, because we have an alternative source of revenue. Prisons don't have an alternative source of revenue. You can't charge tuition in that environment. Same for most of the other sources of government. Furthermore, there is a reasonable argument to be made that that person who's going to benefit from the education should pay at least a substantial portion that he who benefits should pay. So again, more of the same won't get you where you need to go. And fourth and finally, your state is simply not wealthy enough for the generosity that it once provided to the public good. You're about average in every way. You're average in per capita income, actually slightly above in per capita income, but nowhere nearly as far above average per capita as you were 20 or 30, 40 years ago. You used to be substantially above the national average in per capita income. You're now 7% above in per capita income. You're about average in your tax effort, about 4% above the national averages. And you're slightly above in your higher education support, 7 to 14%, depending on the measures that you use. Now that actually may not be true. The numbers I was using on that are 2 years old, and the last 2 years have not been good for higher education funding. But your appetite for public good was built in an era when you had greater wealth and greater capacity to support. And one of the dilemmas you've got is you've got this huge appetite, but limited resources with which to serve that. So the results of all of this are that the education of Californians is at risk. You have, and you can witness that, you have enrollment caps that reduce access in your system, your university system. You have the explicit caps in both the CSU and the University of California. You have implicit limits in your community colleges that are substantial. There are no classes in which to enroll for many students, and for many other students, there are too few classes in which to enroll. So in some cases, students can't even get in to be served. In other cases, they can get in, but they can't take a load that would get them to completion over time. And I would argue that productivity needs improvement within your system of higher education as well. That's not so much true with respect to student success in California. Actually, your statistics on student success are pretty good. If you take a look at this chart, you will see that at your public universities in California, you're above the national average in the share of students. These are statistics that actually are being released today by the National Student Clearinghouse.